rise in nearly half the states. It's back to the beach in Miami. Large crowds expected. As they roll the dice in Vegas, casinos taking increased safety measures to protect guests. The CDC publishing new guidelines urging people to stay vigilant.
That doesn't mean that you walk around without a mask, that you jump into a crowd, that you stop washing your hands.
How a possible rise in cases could reveal itself in the next few weeks.
America's expanding protests, new autonomous zones joining the one in Seattle, where protesters are occupying several city blocks. Plus, the man who tried to stop a gunman who drove his car into demonstrators speaks out about the action he took.
Takedown. Former Saturday Night Live star Jay Farrell releasing this dramatic video and describing how he was detained by Los Angeles police.
They tell me to get on the ground, spread my arms out. They put me in cuffs. The officer took his knee, put it on my neck.
What the star wants the public to learn from stories like this.
Under fire, longtime Vogue editor-in-chief Anna Wintour apologizes for a lack of diversity at the iconic fashion magazine. Do her words go far enough? And what the magazine is saying this morning.
And new technology, how airports are trying to make flying safer and help prevent the spread of COVID-19. The changes you may see the next time you take to the skies.
Live from ABC News in New York, this is Good Morning America.
Good morning. We are facing a balancing act as states reopen. One number this morning to give you an idea of what the nation may be facing this summer as more states restart their economies. In Texas, the statewide hospitalization rate has increased 42% since Memorial Day.
Two states, Utah and Oregon, are putting reopening plans on hold because of increases in cases. Other states, such as Texas and Arkansas, full steam ahead. This as the pandemic has now killed more than 114,000 of our countrymen. And as the CDC has just come out with new recommendations for Americans, as many of us prepare to travel and socialize this summer.
In Yuma County, Arizona, where they are seeing a disturbing rise in cases there, officials are now urging all residents to strictly follow those new CDC guidelines, including wearing masks in public and avoiding crowds. For all of the very latest on this, let's go to ABC's Trevor Alt, who's right here in New York City with more on that. Trevor, good morning.
Well, Whit, good morning. To quote the CDC's Deputy Director of Infectious Diseases, we're not out of the woods yet. This past week, about 800 Americans died from COVID-19 every day. And the CDC's latest estimate says the American death toll from the virus could hit 140,000 people by the 4th of July.
Across America this morning, COVID-19 cases are on the rise in 22 states and Puerto Rico.
Some people don't know that the coronavirus is not gone, and they're treating it like it's gone.
And as protesters continue to crowd together and President Trump announces he's bringing back campaign rallies, the CDC has published new guidelines urging people to wear masks and saying the places with the highest risk are large in-person gatherings where attendees travel from outside the local area.
You can open up and help the economy by getting jobs back and doing things like that. But that doesn't mean that you walk around without a mask, that you jump into a crowd, that you stop washing your hands, that you stop doing the things that are important.
Dr. Anthony Fauci tells ABC a possible rise in cases could reveal itself in the next few weeks, but already in several states, the spread of the virus may be accelerating. Oregon, after the state logged its single highest daily case total, the governor's now pausing the reopening process for a week.
This is essentially a statewide yellow light.
In neighboring Washington state, Yakima County accounts for just 3% of the population, but nearly half the new cases this week. And surprisingly, 50% of those confirmed cases are people under 40 years old. And while Texas is still pushing ahead with reopening, now allowing restaurants at 75% capacity, the state's hospitalization rate has jumped 42% since Memorial Day.
We have no way to slow it down or put any brakes on it.
South Carolina Arizona is seeing its own surge, now gaining new COVID-19 cases at twice the rate of the national average. The state has seen new record high case totals 3 of the last 5 days. The governor has said lifted restrictions will not return. In Florida, while cases continue to climb, Miami beaches are expected to be packed for their first weekend back open. The same is true for casinos, some of them writing entirely new safety manuals to protect their guests.
But it's about slowly walking back in and making sure we create an environment that people can gradually take the steps to enjoy.
And in Los Angeles County, California, film and TV productions now have the green light to start back up.
And here in New York City, where the reopening process just started this past week, Governor Andrew Cuomo is celebrating a pretty remarkable turnaround for New York State. At one point, New York had the highest rate of infection per capita anywhere in the country and anywhere in the world. New York now has the lowest rate of transmission in America. Whit.
Certainly encouraging news there. Trevor Alt for us, thank you. And as Trevor just mentioned, this is the first weekend beaches in Miami are open since the stay-at-home order began. Miami Mayor Francis Suarez is joining us now live. Mayor, thank you so much for speaking with us. And I also just want to mention that you yourself had coronavirus and recovered, so it is good to see you doing well with us this morning. Thank you. I want to jump right to the numbers here. Of course, I want to jump right to the numbers here because Florida reported a new daily record high of more than 1,900 new cases on Friday. Do you have any concern that your state, your city, are reopening too soon?
Of course we're concerned. Not only did they have a daily record of 1,900, I think the day before they also had 1,700. So it's 2 consecutive days of the highest total new cases together. So of course we're concerned. We as a city of Miami were the last to open in the entire state of Florida. We lagged behind Miami-Dade County, which lagged behind the rest of the state. Having said that, there are major concerns that the cases continue to rise, and we still have not incorporated in the data Memorial Day or all the protests. So there are major concerns. That the state data is continuing to increase, and Miami-Dade County is also showing a gradual increase. We were downward sloping over the last 30 days when we began our opening by about 13 cases per day. And that downward slope has declined to a downward slope of 7 cases per day as of Monday. But we continue to see data that's indicating that cases are going up. And like I said, that still doesn't incorporate Memorial Day weekend, and that still doesn't incorporate the protests, which we know have congregated thousands of people in our city, many of which are now wearing masks.
So, Mayor, you just laid out several concerns right there. Are you suggesting that you now lack confidence in the plan to reopen your city? And what about the governor's plan to reopen the state? Is the state moving too fast?
I think the issue is with this is when it began, obviously the economy was doing well, and people were willing to stay at home and were willing to pause the economy for a period of time. Now that we've been several months into this pandemic, I think people are extremely frustrated in terms of the fact that, government has tried to do the best that they can with unemployment, with the PPP loans, and with a variety of other programs to keep the economy going along. And so you run into this sort of issue where, people need to work, people need to obviously be fed. We're obviously feeding people tremendously in the city of Miami, but that is running into the reality that, from a healthcare perspective, we need to be disciplined. And I always said when we started opening that there were 2 paths: the path of responsibility and the path of irresponsibility. And unfortunately, we're starting to see behavior that concerns me deeply.
Mayor, quickly, I just want one quick follow-up because we're out of time here. Is there a scenario in which you would put a pause on reopening?
Yeah, of course. Of course there is, depending on the data. We have been data-driven since the first day, and we're going to continue to be data-driven. Like you said, the data is concerning, and we may have to make some decisions after this weekend and as the data comes in.
And we've talked about that delicate balance. And Mayor Suarez, thank you so much for your time. We do appreciate it. Eva, over to you.
Let's bring in our chief medical correspondent, Dr. Jen Ashton. Thank you so much for being with us, Dr. Jen. So many people are getting out now. Let's look at the CDC's new guidelines on how people can get out and socialize, but more safely. Can you break that down for us?
Eva, it's really under the category of harm reduction. So the CDC releasing guidelines really to help people assess risk, largely based on 4 factors: time, place, number of people in an area, and space or distance apart. They are suggesting specifics like how to safely navigate cookouts, not sharing the same utensils, even gym behaviors like wiping down those hot spots. And even this is despite the fact that last month, the CDC said that surface transmission was thought not to be a major route of transmission for COVID-19. Still strongly recommending masks, though.
Masks so important. And we want to talk about some positive news. There's more encouraging news about the use of convalescent plasma from people who have recovered from COVID-19 as prevention.
Yeah, this is really interesting. Under the broad category of immune therapy, clinical trials underway. Most people have heard about it in terms of treatment. This is about prevention. So it's taking antibodies from people who have recovered, giving them to people, and then seeing if that helps them protect themselves against future infection. Same concept as a vaccine. The only difference is a vaccine stimulates our body to produce these immune soldiers. This time with convalescent plasma, these monoclonal antibodies, they hit the ground ready to go. So clinical trials underway right now.
Promising news. Dr. Jennifer Ashton, thank you so much. Dan?
Eva, Jen, thank you very much. We're going to move now to the protests against police brutality and racism in America. Overnight, more people in the streets. This as government officials across the country are beginning to implement reforms. The question, of course, do those reforms go far enough? So for the latest, let's go to ABC's Zachary Quiche.
Protesters refusing to leave overnight, occupying more neighborhoods in cities across the country, demanding social justice and police reform in the wake of George Floyd's death. In Nashville, crowds setting up tents saying they're taking back the people's land.
What do we want? When do we want it? Now!
In Seattle, for the 5th day, protesters occupied several city blocks, taking over the area, including the 6th precinct, which was boarded up earlier this week after days of clashes between protesters and police. The movement here has been largely peaceful, but not without violence. A gunman drove his car into a crowd of Capitol Hill demonstrators earlier this week. Daniel Gregory says he jumped in to help.
There was one goal only to stop that car.
Gregory was shot in the process.
I didn't want anything bad happen to those people.
Several police departments across the country are adopting incremental changes. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo signed a series of police reforms this week that put a ban on chokeholds and changes a measure that protects police discipline from public view.
This is not just about Mr. Floyd's murder. It's about being here before. Many, many times before.
In Boston, the mayor declared racism a public health crisis and made a pledge to transfer funds from the police department's overtime budget towards community programs.
We're listening and we're taking action. And that's what we need to continue to do.
In Minneapolis, the city council voted to completely replace the existing police department and reimagine public safety, committing to a year-long community-driven effort to rethink what policing looks like post-George Floyd. The mayor there has said he wants to make reforms to the existing system. Really interesting to see what we're seeing out of Minneapolis. We haven't seen anywhere else around the country take those kinds of measures. Of course, it's important to delineate between disband and defund. Of course, disband means to replace. Defund means to reallocate those funds to other areas like education or social services. Also worth noting here that a judge has been assigned in that case involving those 4 former Minneapolis police officers. He's a former defense attorney who used to work with Senator Amy Klobuchar when she was county attorney.
All right, an important distinction there. Thank you so much, Zachary Quiche, for us. We appreciate it. We move now to President Trump speaking out on the issue of police chokeholds. And after facing criticism, he's now decided to move the date of his Oklahoma rally next week. ABC's Rachel Scott has more.
This morning, President Trump bowing to pressure and changing the date of his June 19th rally in Tulsa.
Your rally in Oklahoma is set for June 19th. Was that on purpose? No, but I know exactly what you're going to say. It wasn't done for that reason, but it's an interesting date.
The date commemorating the end of slavery and the location Tulsa is the site of what is believed to be the single worst incident of racial violence in American history. In a string of tweets overnight, the president said the decision was based out of respect for this holiday and in observance of this important occasion and all it represents. As protesters from coast to coast demand for police reform, President Trump said the use of chokeholds should generally come to an end.
I think the concept of chokehold sounds so innocent, so perfect, and then you realize if it's a one-on-one, now if it's two-on-one, that's a little bit of a different story, depending. With that being said, it would be, I think, a very good thing that, generally speaking, it should be ended.
But the president stopped short of supporting a ban on the practice. The calls for change comes as the nation confronts its troubling past. And overnight, the Trump administration also sparking outrage on the issue of equal rights after moving to roll back transgender health protection. Joe Biden noting the decision's timing, tweeting on the 4th anniversary of Pulse in the middle of Pride Month during a global pandemic. Donald Trump's cruelty truly knows no bounds. More than 1.5 million Americans identify as transgender, but the new anti-discrimination rule only protecting those who identify as male or female, no longer encompassing gender identity.
And the Department of Health and Human Services says they are committed to enforcing civil rights in healthcare. Now, today, President Trump will head to West Point to deliver the commencement address, and it comes as some former military officials have spoken out criticizing his handling over those protests. Dan?
Yeah, the tension between the military and the administration has been very interesting to watch. Rachel Scott, thank you very much. As America eases out of lockdown, the summer travel season is now getting started. So how many people will actually hit the roads, the rails, and the skies, and what will it look like at the major travel hubs? ABC's Gio Benitez is on that story.
This morning, with passenger numbers on the rise, more airports across the country are turning to new technology to help prevent the spread of COVID-19. Houston's George Bush Intercontinental Airport launching a facial recognition program this week. Instead of handing a boarding pass or phone to an agent, a computer will scan your face and compare it to a government database before letting you board the plane.
Right now, you're using this at 2 international gates. Are you looking at more gates?
By the end of June, we're going to implement it in 3 additional gates for a total of 5. And then the plan is by October, expand it to 15 gates for our international travelers.
While air travel is still down more than 80%, the numbers are ticking up. For the first time since March, TSA screened more than 500,000 passengers Thursday. It's just one reason why this program was fast-tracked. And now word that the Department of Transportation says it will send nearly 100 million cloth facial coverings to airports, transit agencies, and Amtrak for passenger use.
Now, other airports and airlines have been testing similar programs. So far, this is only for international travel, but we should tell you, if you don't feel comfortable using it, we're told you can opt out and scan your boarding pass the traditional way.
All right, Gio Benitez for us. Thank you so much. Let's transition now. Get a check of the forecast. Rob Marciano is out there in Westchester County giving us a look at the weather for the weekend. Rob, what's going on?
Good morning, Whit. Just down the road from your abode. A beautiful morning to start here. We are watching, though, the fire issues in the west, and they're going to continue for a couple of days. We'll start with a fresh fire in Highlands Ranch, Colorado, just outside of Denver. Just a grass fire, about 3 acres. No harm, no foul here as far as structures or people go. But we do have a fire in Santa Barbara County that they got under control fairly quickly, and a larger fire that's been ongoing all week in central and northern Arizona, the Oro Valley fire there. We're watching that because more heat today, more low levels of humidity, and more in the way of gusty winds, not just for Arizona, but for Utah and Colorado, getting into the panhandle of Texas. And temperatures, before this front gets through, are going to be fairly high. So fire weather watch is posted as well. A heat ridge will build as that front kind of pushes it along, and hotter weather is expected in Oklahoma City, Kansas City, and Dallas, 95. That's a check on the national headlines. Time now for a look at your local forecast.
A lot of sunshine today, low humidity still across the area, highs into the upper 70s, approaching the 80-degree mark. I think some added clouds by the late afternoon hours. The best chance for showers this weekend will be in the mountains to the west. I think a higher likelihood tonight into your Sunday. Mostly cloudy on Sunday. Yes, we will have those clouds hanging around Monday and Tuesday. Better chances for rain late week. I will have more on that later 7-day outlook and cool conditions. Good morning, Washington at 8 a.m.
We'll check back with Rob in just a little bit. Now to the controversy at Vogue magazine. Its iconic longtime editor-in-chief under fire over an alleged lack of diversity in the ranks. Anna Wintour apologizing for, quote, published images or stories that have been hurtful or intolerant. ABC's Diane Macedo has more.
She's one of the most infamous bodies